Welcome to today's Lunch with the RDS, where we'll be looking at cultural competence and inclusivity in grant applications. The inclusion of people from diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds in health and social care research is essential to conducting impactful research. Cultural inclusivity needs to be considered at every phase of the research process, and therefore at all stages of a grant application, from design to dissemination. What do we mean by cultural competence, and can anyone ever really be completely competent in a diverse range of cultures? Cultural competence is an ongoing process of developing self-awareness, cultural knowledge, including knowledge about health beliefs and practices across cultures, and skills that will help us build relationships with people of various cultural backgrounds. Cultural competence is a continuous process of reflection and self-evaluation. This process helps us become more aware of our own culture or intersecting cultures, and more aware of the assumptions, subconscious stereotypes, bias or judgments that we may have about our own or other communities, which could impact the research process. Cultural competence is about empathy, sensitivity, and recognizing power dynamics. It requires humility and recognizing that the cultural groups that researchers work with are the experts in their own lives. Cultural competence is an evolving process because cultures themselves are always changing. The concept of cultural competence has been the subject of some debate over the years, with researchers questioning whether anyone can ever be competent in cultures other than their own. The word competence implies a certain level of proficiency, skill, or expertise. While no one can ever be completely culturally competent, the ongoing process of reflection and self-awareness is vital to engaging better with diverse ethnic and cultural communities. Cultural beliefs influence people's views and experiences of health, illness, healthcare, services, and support. Culture can also shape people's views about taking part in research. When thinking about your research topic, it can be helpful to consider, how will I learn more about different cultural views and ensure that my study design doesn't exclude specific groups? Is the topic you're planning to research considered taboo in some communities? Is there stigma around talking about it? How can you include a diverse range of views in your study in a sensitive, culturally appropriate way? Having a diverse research team, patient and public involvement group, advisory or steering group can all help to make your research more inclusive. It's also important to consider whether your study materials, such as participant information sheets and consent forms, are developed with cultural inclusivity in mind. Language is a key consideration. For example, are the materials that you'll be sharing with participants easy to read and understand? If they aren't, this can create a barrier to taking part in your study. You may also need to consider whether having materials only in written English will exclude people from taking part. It may be helpful to have study materials in more than one language or in audio and video formats. You might also need to think about translation or interpretation and factoring these into the study costs. Recruiting a diverse sample is crucial to conducting inclusive research. It's helpful to build relationships with community and voluntary organisations, with community leaders, different faith groups, support groups and charities as early as possible. Trust, respect and confidentiality are key. How might you include people from a range of ethnic and cultural groups in your study? How will you include people who don't speak English? It can be helpful to have researchers with specific language and cultural skills who can help with collecting data, analysis, and interpretation. In some cultural contexts, the gender of researchers will need to be considered, and whether, for example, you need to have men-only and women-only groups. When conducting focus groups, interviews, workshops or other events. It's also helpful to consider whether these are being held on dates or at times that might clash with cultural or religious activities that are important to your participants. It's important to ensure that your study findings reach diverse audiences, including people from a range of cultural and ethnic groups. As well as peer-reviewed papers and conference presentations, you might also consider sharing your findings with community organisations, faith centres or places of worship, and community TV and radio stations. If you're hosting an event, think about where the event will be taking place, the timing of the event, whether the venue is accessible, and food and dietary needs. Cultural competence is a continuous process, and attending courses can help increase knowledge and awareness. The Centre for Ethnic Health Research at the University of Leicester runs courses on cultural competence. The NIHR Research Design Service can also help support researchers to consider cultural inclusivity at every stage of the process. If you'd like support, do contact your regional RDS as early as possible.